Okay, third time recording this video. Let's actually get right this time. Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. So this video is going to be about dismissive avoidant attachment style, very similar to the other video I did on anxious preoccupied attachment style. So basically I'll be going more in depth about this attachment style and then talking about how it develops in childhood and then how to correct it. And I may have to split this into two videos just like the last one. And if you have not watched my video on anxious preoccupied attachment style, I suggest you go and watch it because I'll be making some comparison between that and dismissive avoidant attachment style. So people who are dismissive, they have a problem with intimacy. They see intimacy as something that is dangerous. They see feelings, emotions, sympathy, and empathy as something that's for the weak. Like they see expressing their emotions outwardly as just a weakness, so they keep everything inside. But because they are also human, they still need love. Like, you know, human beings, they naturally need and crave love. So because they see their emotions as a weakness, they don't want to put too much effort into a relationship, so they end up dating people who have anxious preoccupied attachment style, because people with that attachment style will give and give and give, like even though they're getting nothing in return. So dismissives will seek out partners who they can take love from, but who they don't necessarily have to give love back to. Dismissives have a tendency to seek their fulfillment outside of a relationship, right? So people with this attachment style, they tend to have something else that they have put all their focus and attention into. Most of the time it's work. Like they'll be workaholics. They will be very career driven and career based, because then they don't have to, they use that as an excuse to not invest emotionally into their relationships. It's important to note that they still have a level of unhappiness, you know? Like the common misconception with this attachment style is that these people are somehow happier because they don't get attached romantically, because they don't get their feelings hurt, because they're not emotionally connected. But people have to remember that just because someone is not sad doesn't mean that they are happy, if that makes sense. So just because somebody with this attachment style may not experience heartbreak like people who are vulnerable, it doesn't mean that they're necessarily happier than the average person. People with secure attachment styles, they tend to have a high level of happiness, and then they tend to make a decent income. Like their happiness and their income kind of balance out. And then people with anxious preoccupied attachment style, they tend to have a low income because they're so fixated on their relationship that they don't really focus on their career, and a low level of happiness as well because their relationship is pretty dysfunctional most of the time. And then people with dismissive avoidant attachment style, the style in this video, they tend to have a high income because, like I said, they're workaholics, but their level of happiness is the same as people with anxious preoccupied attachment style, you know? So I just had to clear that up, because there's like this misconception that this attachment style is positive because they don't experience heartbreak that deeply, but it's really not. Like it's really just as dysfunctional as anxious preoccupied. Dismissives have a way of, okay, I'm not going to say that it's manipulation. It can be, but it's not all the time. Like during the courting phase, they know how to be charming. They know how to be, you know, a way that will make someone actually want to date them. Because if they're standoffish right from the beginning, most times people won't go for that. Some people do. But most times people are not going to want you if you're just standoffish right from the gate. So dismissives do tend to bring out that charming side of themselves at first, and once they're actually in the relationship, that's when they kind of pull back. And this could result from two different things. Like this could go two ways. Somebody with like narcissistic personality disorder, they do this as a game. Like they do this purposely, like act really charming, suck you in, and then kind of throw you away. But just because narcissists fall under this attachment style, it doesn't mean that everyone with this attachment style is a narcissist, you know? So another way this could go is, you know, someone who's a dismissive, they will be charming and be loving in the beginning, and they're not faking it, like that's how they truly feel. But once that intimacy starts to reach a certain level, that's when they'll start to pull back, and that's when the whole dysfunctional dance starts. Because you know, an anxious preoccupied, once their partner pulls back, they're like going even harder, you know, to get their partner's emotion, and a dismissive is going to back off even more. Honestly, a lot of people don't realize that dismissives like they have an air to them, like they're above, you know, relationships, like they're above love, they're above emotions. Like, I'm just about my money, I'm not about, you know, I don't care about no love, no this. But deep down inside, it's like a subconscious fear of rejection. It's a subconscious fear that they're not worthy of love and they're not good enough for love. So just keep that in mind. Like, you can't always judge a book by its cover. And if you're dealing with someone who is a dismissive, or, you know, someone who's emotionally unavailable, they could come across as very like cold and just aloof and just stoic. But deep down inside, they do, even if they don't realize it, subconsciously they do want to be loved. Like, they do want love. They just, somewhere down the line in their childhood, that need, they felt like they had to repress that need. Later on in the video, we'll get more in detail about childhood and how that ended up happening. But yeah, when you're in a relationship with someone who's dismissive, they have this attitude of like, they would rather hurt other people than be hurt. Like, they would rather discard their partner or like cut their partner off if there's any sign that their partner, you know, just might be either too clingy, like to the point where they feel suffocated, or when they just feel like their partner is just not up to par and they don't express their emotions. So their partners sometimes are completely blindsided by this. Like, one day they're in love and the next day they're just like, all right, yeah, this isn't working out. And the partner's just like, okay, this is news to me, you know? But that's the thing. If somebody can walk away from you that easily, then that means that they were never fully emotionally connected. So a dismissive, they never fully emotionally connect to their partner, so it's easier for them to discard them. Now, like I said, with the narcissist, this is done intentionally. Okay, this is like a form of abuse, a game that they play, whatever. But that's not the case with all dismissives. Some dismissives actually are running from their own feelings when they throw their partners in the trash. Like, if they feel like they're just becoming too emotionally overwhelmed, or they're feeling like they're going to have to be vulnerable with their partner, that scares them subconsciously, and they'll just make up an excuse to leave. Like, they'll focus on their partner's shortcomings or their flaws, and they'll use that as an excuse to back off or to leave. And again, like I said, the partner is usually blindsided because dismissives hide their emotions so much, you never see it coming when they just up and leave you. But the whole time, in the back of their mind for the past 2 months, they have been slowly emotionally detaching from you so that they can leave you. And if you're watching this video and you are dismissive, feel free to comment down below and just explain your thought process, because a lot of people don't understand, and they see it just as really evil and cold when somebody like withdraws like that. But there's a purpose behind it. So if you watched my last video on anxious preoccupied attachment style, then you will know that they do something called activating strategies, where when they feel like their partner is pulling back, they will try to force their way into their partner's heart. Like, emotionally, they'll do certain things to make themselves feel closer to their partners. They'll get really, really clingy, really, really needy. Now, people with dismissive avoidant attachment style, they tend to do the opposite. So they do something called deactivating strategies. So when their partner is getting too close, or that's a scary thing for them, they don't like it, and they do these deactivating strategies to push that person away. And if you've ever been in a relationship like this, you know, dismissives let you know that you are very low on their priority list. They let you know that your emotions are your business and not theirs. So if you're going to be overly emotional, or if you're going to be wanting reassurance like anybody wants from their partner, you're not going to get that from a dismissive. And when you try to get that, they're going to start to implement these deactivating strategies. And these things include, you know, making their partner jealous, flirting with other people. Let me clarify this, because with anxious preoccupied people, they will do that same thing, but they do it in hopes that their partner will get jealous and be closer to them. A dismissive, when they do it so that their partner can back off. Like, they do it to put a wall up between them and their partner. Other deactivating strategies include like pulling away when their partner is expressing any type of emotion to them. So if you've ever been in a situation where you were expressing your emotions to someone and then their eyes sort of like glazed over and they kind of just like spaced out, most likely they were a dismissive avoidant. They just don't like to internalize other people's problems. They see emotions as a weakness, so they're going to just check out when you're trying to express your emotions to them. Other deactivating strategies are focusing on their partner's imperfections, like just really, really focusing on them hard, and that's just a way for them not to get too attached. Just the smallest things, like, oh God, I hate the way she chews, she's so annoying. Like, just the littlest petty things, like, and sometimes they don't even realize that they're doing it, but it's a subconscious, like, defense mechanism because they're trying to keep as much emotional distance as they can. And also, another thing that dismissives will do is that they will have this thing called a phantom ex. Now, this ex is like the cream of the crop, the one who got away. This person is so perfect and no one can ever compare. And honestly, most of the time, this ex wasn't even that great. Like, this ex, the relationship probably was very lackluster, but a dismissive will basically idealize that ex in their head, because if they can convince themselves that nobody will ever compare to this ex, then that's a way that they can keep their distance from future partners. So if they get into a relationship with someone else and they don't want to get that close, they don't want to be vulnerable, they'll just start comparing, like, oh, like my ex was way better, like my ex did this, or my ex, like, it's just a like I said, it's a way to keep that wall up. So it's called the phantom ex. So if you ever dated a dismissive and they just were so caught up on their ex and they just couldn't get over their ex, 9 times out of 10 their ex wasn't that great, and if the ex was that great, they would still be together. Also, dismissives, in order to keep people away from them emotionally, they tend to be very sneaky and very secretive. But it's like they tend to leave their partner in the dark a lot, and that's another way of like distancing themselves from their partner. A lot of times they'll have like somebody else on the side, leaving their partner in the dark, leaving their partner in a state of confusion, so that then they won't have to be intimate and vulnerable with said partner. So if you are dating a dismissive and they are secretive in that way, huge red flag. Huge red flag. I'm just saying, it's just a relationship pattern. You know, so just be aware and be alert. And then the most common deactivating strategy is just pulling away when things get too serious. Like, one minute, you know, you're in love and you're happy, and then the next minute, a dismissive is just, you know, pulling away, pulling back, not calling as much. And again, it's not anything personal. It's really just to keep distance between you and them, because they just don't want to be vulnerable. I don't know how many times I'm going to say vulnerable in this video. Bear with me, people. And the sad part is that they do this to people who are most important to them. So if a person doesn't matter to them that much, then, you know, that person will have a pretty normal relationship with a dismissive. But like, if you're a person who's dating a dismissive and you're actually important to them and they actually feel like emotionally connected to you, you're the person that they're going to push away. So I guess we can move into childhood, right? And how this attachment style is formed. So with anxious preoccupied attachment style, which is my last video, that is formed when the parent is inconsistent with nurturing. So the child cries, the parent will pick the child up and nurture him or her, calling a child a it, nurture him or her. But then in other times when the child cries, the parent will not nurture him or her. So it was very inconsistent. They never knew when they were going to get their needs met. Okay. But with this attachment style, with dismissive avoidant, the parents are just completely emotionally unavailable. Okay. So it's not even like, okay, sometimes the parent is nurturing, sometimes the parent's not. No, this parent in this attachment style, they are never, like, they completely reject and dismiss their children. Like, if their child comes crying or whatever, they're like, get away from me. So with the dismissive, they're not in a state of confusion, because it's not like, oh, I don't know what's going to happen. Are they going to pick me up and love me or not? Their parents make it very clear that they also see emotions as a weakness. They see it as a nuisance and a burden. So yeah, they never nurture their children, which Anyway, if a baby is constantly being rejected by their caretaker, eventually that baby just learns to not ask their caretaker for anything and try to get their own needs met, which is horrifying because, like, as a baby, what? Like, you can't meet your own needs. So usually that just means they will withdraw, because if they show any type of emotion, if they cry, if they seek out nurturing from their caretaker, then their caretaker usually rejects them. So in their mind, the way to stay close to their caretaker is to never show their emotion, to never show that they need something, to get their take on their own needs. And people with this attachment style, when they grow up, if you ask them about their childhood, they will say they had a good childhood. They'll say their parents are great. But that's not true. That's not true. They have almost blocked out, or they've almost like dissociated from their childhood, where they like, their parents neglected them, but they don't want to come to that realization because, again, they don't want those emotions flooding them. Yeah, so in the last video I mentioned a study that was done with anxious preoccupieds, and it was with infants between the ages of 12 and 18 months. And when a mother entered the room, the infant would cling to the mother but would not make eye contact, okay, because of the inconsistent nurturing. But with this attachment style, with dismissive avoidant, it's like the child would just ignore the mother. The mother would walk in and the child would be like, oh, that's nice, and carry on whatever they were doing. And that just goes to show you, like, how much they pretty much just come to the realization that their parents can't do anything for them. So, like, I'm going to have to just take care of myself. And I hope that hearing that explanation, for anybody who's ever dated a dismissive, understand that it's not personal the way that they act. Like, this is the only way they know how to be. Like, it's really not their fault. It's a defense mechanism, you know? So yeah, like I was saying, dismissives, they tend to not show any emotion towards their parents. Their parent leaves, their parent comes, they don't care, they're indifferent. The only thing that they tend to express towards their parents actually is anger, which that spills over into adulthood too, because if you've ever dated a dismissive, or if you are a dismissive, then you know this. Dismissives, usually the only emotion you can get out of them is anger. So a lot of times, like, if you're a dismissive and you're dating an anxious preoccupied, and they constantly push your buttons and try to piss you off, it's because they feel like they can't get any other emotion out of you except rage. You know, so that is a form of emotional manipulation. It is. It really is. But they feel like, I need to know that this person cares. So, like, I can get them riled up and get them pissed off. If they're not going to show me that they're sad about me or vulnerable, then, you know, the next best thing is to make them angry. So yes, unfortunately, you know, in childhood, most times people with this attachment style just completely were just emotionally abandoned and neglected. And this is my problem with people who, when they have boys, when they have sons, okay, I'm about to, you know, rant. It's about to be a little mini rant. When people have sons and they tell their sons, you know, stop crying like a girl. Don't pick him up, let him cry. He's a boy. Like, do you not understand what you're doing to your child? Like, that is my if you want to piss me off, then come around me with a boy and tell the boy stop crying like a girl, because that's going to set me off. I can't stand it. I think it's so, like, I don't think people understand how harmful it is. And that's why a lot of men are walking around with this attachment style of dismissive avoidant. And that's why they go around acting like, oh, I don't care about this. Like, the lack of empathy. And it's not just men who have this attachment style, bear with me. But in society, like society in general, they tend to try to make men suppress their emotions like it's a weakness. So it's like, that starts within childhood, with the whole boys don't cry, boys don't, you know, that's weak. And it's just, it's harmful. It's very extremely harmful, because every human being needs to be connected to their parents emotionally. Every human being needs to be able to emotionally open up and express their feelings. And every human being needs love. And with this attachment style, unfortunately, yes, you are keeping people out by not being vulnerable, but you're also not letting people in. So you never really experience that real love, okay? I guess I'll get more into that in part 2, but people, stop telling your sons that crying is a weakness. Like, honestly, cut it out, honestly. Like, do better with your life. Like I said, I don't want to judge parents like this, because most likely their parents were also that way, and they just, like, passed that attachment style down. But it's just so toxic, and it's just so, it's so harmful. The child grows up just emotionally disconnected and running around breaking people's hearts and not getting the love they deserve themselves. Like, just just don't shame a man or anyone for opening up emotionally, okay? So yeah, I guess I will split this video into, like I said, and I will jump into how to change this attachment style in the next video. So I will see you over there.